concerns and translate those concerns into corrective actions to ensure the program remain on track. I think his approach would have been better for the Boeing company, no question. But to say that Alan Mulally and as I like to call him sometimes, Saint Alan Mulally of Seattle, because he can do no wrong. I think to say that he's the guy that could solve all Boeing's problem, I think is a bit of a stretch. But definitely, at the time, he would have been ideal to course correct, because his management approach and his leadership attributes, his exceptional leadership attributes, would have probably captured the concerns and reinjected those concerns into the organization in a way that would have prevented the debacle of 09, 08, you name it. Are you going to use St. Alan Mulally of Seattle?
Yes, St. Alan Mulally. I like that. What did you make of McNerney's war with the unions? The unions bailed Boeing out with the 787 problems. The unions bailed Boeing out by being able to increase the production of the 737 to the extent, and the 777 to the extent that they did. And yet, McNerney just went into full global combat with them.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent about the unions. I think the union culture was a fantastic asset of the Boeing company. And why do I say that? It's because you had, with the union, you still have, but to a much lesser extent nowadays, you had this pride in the most positive sense of the word, okay, in the work and dedication of individuals for the work accomplished. And I think the unions nurtured and contributed greatly in that sense, because there was fundamental pride in what you were doing on the Boeing line in Renton or Boeing Field or wherever. And that, I think, is the culture of the organization. Yeah, we may disagree about the unions in terms of what they say, how they say it, and for me, who's a hardcore capitalist business guy, yeah, sometimes I'm like, come on, guys, cut the 1900 rhetoric, please. But I admire them in the sense that they were, to a degree, they were the Boeing culture of generational competences and execution, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But the transformation of the market and the competitive environment in the 2000 was a clash, a fundamental clash of culture. And I think Jim McNerney was trying to communicate this to the union, say, guys, this is not the 70s, 80s, 90s anymore, okay? We have a competitor that is just giving us a really, really hard time, and we cannot compete on cost. And again, this must be paralleled with the evolution of the airline CEO, CFO's got. You got, this better than me. You've tracked this market much longer and much more in more detail than I have. In the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, the CEO was a passionate guy or gal, mostly guy, about aviation. They loved aviation. This was their passion, fundamentally. And then in the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s, God forbid, we have this new breed of CEO. They are not in there because they love aviation. The Brad Tilden of the world that have grown up within the Oasis, the Seattle Oasis, family, Boeing, this and that. These people are going away. How many CEOs today can you name that come from an aviation family? There's not that many left.
No. So,
and I think that's the reality, and I think Jim McNerney really realistically saw that. They say, we cannot sell airplanes just on the engineering merit of those aircraft anymore. This is a rat race. This is a sales. This is a race to the bottom, quote unquote.
Well, and of course, Boeing said that it kept on losing sales to Airbus because of illegal subsidies. What was your take on the whole trade war?
Oh, can of worms. The trade war. I mean, at the expense of saying something damn risky about the trade war, this is kind of like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, isn't it? We can go back to the trade war. We can go back 2,000 years ago to identify the conflict in Israel and Palestine, as much as we can go back to World War I, World War II to identify the source of the trade dispute and the WTO to a degree. All right. If I put my European hat on, you could say, well, the Boeing company got a massive boost from the Cold War and World War II from the military, from the DoD. But that is more of a qualitative assessment that is and somewhat different from the WTO dispute. But you can again qualitatively, or I think you can take angles and perceptions. It's very personal.
Well, I always thought that Boeing's position on subsidies was totally hypocritical, because no company that I'm aware of goes to the taxpayer till more often than Boeing for tax breaks and subsidies and all of that sort of stuff, and that sets aside the benefits that they got from the cross fertilization from the military contracts.
Well, it's just not only the military cross-fertilization, Scott. You also have tremendous amount of derived benefits from the work that the Boeing company does with universities and government agencies. Okay? And that really is what was a point of contention on the part of Airbus that I think is entirely justified, where Boeing got tremendous value from de-risking and cost savings from, working with NASA, working with universities. And that's to a credit of our universities and NASA, which was superlatively capable in, organization. But I think, aerospace, commercial aerospace, is such a strategic industry. It is evident that, Airbus was going to take a lot of loans. I mean, even today, okay, the fundamental question, Airbus versus Boeing, is I think, as I say, was the cost of money. The cost money of Airbus versus the cost money of Boeing. Boeing was faced more often than not with financial issues where, they were dealing with market rates, loans and stuff like that. Whereas the cost of money at Airbus was slightly different in terms of its, repayable and interest rates and stuff like that. But, Airbus very poorly negotiated the A320 contract with European governments. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Well, I know they're still paying royalties on the airplanes.
Exactly. Ziegler and the gang initially thought they would sell 700 airplanes. Mm-hmm. And they calculated the royalties based on 700 airplanes. And 10,000 airplanes later, they're still paying European governments.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I think they are on the A330 as well. I think.
So, I think the WTO stuff is so incredibly complex. I cannot claim any specific expertise. It's more for the world of the lawyers. But I think that Boeing was
Boeing making excuses?
No, I think their approach was completely understanding and legitimate as a means to, perhaps too late, try to derail the rise of a competitor. You know.
Well, and then in that case, what do you think of the Bombardier trade complaint on the C series?